Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to get into some source material you shared with us. It's an article covering the Bitcoin 2025 conference. Happened out in Las Vegas recently.
That's right. And this article paints a picture of thousands of people there, all focused on Bitcoin, maybe a bit of the wider crypto scene too. Big event, apparently.
Yeah, sounds like it. The source really seemed to pick up on one central idea, almost like a keyword for the whole thing.
It did. Right near the top, it says the word was freedom. That seemed to be the thread connecting a lot of the talks and, the general vibe, according to this piece.
Okay, freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal here is really to unpack what this article tells us about Bitcoin 2025. What were the key takeaways, the themes, maybe some surprises, based only on this source material?
Exactly. We want to understand what the article highlights as being most important there.
So let's start with that freedom angle. Who did the source say was pushing this message, and what did they mean by it in this context?
Well, the article mentioned a few people. Michael Saylor, for instance, apparently dropped the word freedom multiple times. But maybe the most powerful example the source gave was Ross Ulbricht.
Ah, right. The article made a point of that.
Yeah.
It was, one of his first big public talks since he was released?
Yeah, and the source quoted him directly. He connected his own experience with the whole idea of decentralization.
How so?
He basically said something like, so long as we can agree that we deserve freedom and that decentralization is how we secure it, then we can be united. Just like you had mine. He was crediting the Bitcoin community, you see.
Right, for supporting him.
Exactly. The source really positions that as tying this big idea of freedom to the actual network, the community around Bitcoin, makes it very personal.
Yeah, that definitely grounds it. So the article highlights this foundational freedom message, kind of ideological. But then, and this is where it gets interesting, I think, the source also talks a lot about something that feels a bit different. Politics and policy, like heavy engagement.
Exactly. The source suggests, similar to other crypto events in the U.S. lately, especially after, former President Trump started talking more about it, there was a big shift.
A shift towards what?
Towards focusing on how government, how regulations, how laws are actually impacting Bitcoin users. It wasn't just abstract anymore.
And it wasn't just people talking about politicians either.
Yeah.
Right? The source said lawmakers were actually there speaking.
Yes, absolutely. It listed several names from the U.S. Congress, Senator Cynthia Lummis, Representatives Brian Steele, Byron Donalds, Tom Emmer. They were on panels, the article says.
Panels about what specifically?
Focused on legislation, on the push to actually pass laws about digital assets. That seemed to be a major focus, according to the source.
Okay. And did the article mention which laws they were talking about?
Yeah, mainly two big ones, it seems. One was about setting up a clear market structure for digital assets, rules for trading, issuing crypto.
Right, the basics.
And the other was specifically about payment stablecoins, the ones pegged to, say, the U.S. dollar, getting rules for those.
Makes sense.
Representative Steele was quoted, actually. He said something about being closer and closer to getting these passed and called them potentially transformative. The source used that word.
Transformative.
Yeah.
That's a strong word. So Congress members are there pushing legislation. Anyone else, politically speaking?
Yeah, the source mentioned Hester Peirce from the SEC. She's generally seen as more crypto-friendly, relatively speaking. She spoke about the SEC's future leadership.
Okay, and even higher up.
Presidential advisors, actually. Bo Hines and David Sachs. They were apparently there talking about the current administration's stance on Bitcoin.
Wow. Didn't the article say they even floated an idea about the U.S. government itself buying Bitcoin? Like a national stockpile?
It did mention that. Sachs apparently suggested it could be budget neutral, which is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So you see this real tension the source highlights. On one side, you've got this core message of individual freedom, decentralization.
Right, away from the state.
And right alongside it, you've got serious talk about the state maybe buying Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And definitely writing the rules for it.
That contrast really comes through in the article's reporting, yeah. It seems central to what was happening there.
And this wasn't just a U.S. thing, was it? The source mentioned international involvement, too.
No, not at all. The article pointed out some international figures making announcements as well.
Like the mayor of Panama City? Something about shipping?
Yeah, suggesting a more Bitcoin-friendly approach for maritime traffic, apparently. And also, the head of Pakistan's Crypto Council was mentioned.
What about Pakistan?
The source said their government was moving towards setting up its own national Bitcoin reserve. So yeah, this political engagement the article describes, it's definitely a global thing.
Okay, and connecting back to that freedom idea, The source also mentioned Nigel Farage was there, the Reform UK leader.
He was. And he announced his party would start taking crypto donations for the UK election.
And did the source quote him on why?
It did. And it ties right back in. He apparently said something like, "No wonder so many people are going for Bitcoin, because they can't close you down. And that is the ultimate freedom."
So he's framing crypto as a tool for political action, one that's harder for the establishment to control. It kind of bridges the two themes, in a way.
Yeah, that quote really captures how some are linking that freedom narrative directly to political engagement, using crypto within the system, but trying to maintain that independent edge.
So looking at everything the source covered, U.S. lawmakers pushing bills, presidential advisors talking stockpiles, international governments looking at reserves or friendly policies, political parties taking donations. The article really emphasizes heavy direct engagement between Bitcoin and governments.
It definitely shows things are changing, doesn't it? The conversation isn't just happening in niche technical forums anymore. It's squarely in the political arena globally. The foundational ideas are still there, but the reality reported by the source is that governments are very much involved now.
And the article threw in one last little detail, kind of a reality check, amidst all the big talk.
Yeah, the price.
Right. The source noted that during the conference, Bitcoin's price actually dropped by about 5% from when the event started.
Just a reminder from the source that, all these discussions, the policy pushes, the political excitement, they happen alongside the market just doing its thing.
Okay.
Puts in context.
Okay, so let's try and sum up what this deep dive into the source material showed us about Bitcoin 2025. We saw, first, that strong freedom message. Very prominent, highlighted by figures like Ulbricht, Farage, all about decentralization independence.
Yeah, and then sharply contrasted with that was this intense focus on politics and policy, maybe more than ever before. The source pointed to U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance urging political action, Congress members talking specific transformative legislation.
Presidential advisors discussing U.S. government stockpiles, Pakistan potentially creating a reserve, Panama City looking at Bitcoin for trade. It's a long list.
A very long list. It really hammers home, based on this article, how much the Bitcoin landscape is evolving. It's moving way beyond just tech or ideology. Now it's about direct, serious engagement with governments, with political systems all over the world.
And that's why understanding this conference through the lens of this source is important for you, the listener.
Yeah.
It shows this evolution so clearly. You've got the decentralization ideal meeting the hard reality of state interest head on.
Exactly. That intersection is the key takeaway, I think. And it leads to maybe one final thought, something just based on what we've unpacked from this source.
Go on.
Well, the article shows us people arguing Bitcoin is about freedom from the state, right? But at the same time, it details massive efforts by states and politicians to get involved, to regulate it, maybe even hoard it.
Right.
So the question to maybe leave you with is, how is this growing intersection, this meeting point between decentralization dreams and state-level actions, going to shape where Bitcoin goes next? What does that future look like? Something to think about based on what the source laid out.